Good morning, gorgeous ones. How are we? Tuesday morning here at Real Life Medicine Central. I hope you're all happy and well. This week we are talking about, some of our favourite topics. And as you know, we love helping people just unpack the stories in their head that cause them to do what we call emotional eating, or a sort of less emotive topic, I guess, is non-hungry eating. So for the majority of people that have trouble managing their weight, it's not, they're eating because they're not hungry. And I remember I used to say that, it's not hunger that's driving me. There was some times, don't get me wrong, there was some times where I was hungry, and a lot of that came back to my insulin resistance, which sort of made me eat, 4 or 5 times a day. But even then, it was really, once I sorted that, it was still the non-hungry eating that was the bit that I needed to really get on top of. How are you all beautiful people? Jodes, hello darling. Belinda. So yesterday we talked a little bit about reward eating, and it is really entrenched. I've got something in my eye. Really entrenched. I saw another lady yesterday, and her story was very similar to some of the stories I told yesterday. And her story her issue was the time before dinner. And she said, what happens before dinner is I just want to pick. And I pick everything. Like, okay, so we talked a lot about what's happening for her. And what was happening, she has small kids. And this was an online consult, so she's not in Victoria doing school lockdown. But what was happening was that every afternoon, she would have a little platter out for the children when they came home from school. And the platter would consist of some fruit, some savoury shapes, and maybe some cheese. Different varieties. And sometimes she would have some cake or a slice or something she'd made. And we talked about this. We go, okay, so what's the point of this platter? She said, well, I think they need to eat something when they come home from school. They've had a hard day, and, I want them to feel better after their hard day at school. Which, sounds really innocent, doesn't it? And we talked a bit about the idea that 2 things. One, okay, absolutely. Kids are often hungry after school. So you can feed them for fuel. But is school hard? Do we have to set that story up in their head that school is hard? And because it's so hard, here's something to offset that difficulty. So there's kind of 2 things. One, sort of perpetuating this myth, if you like, that school is hard, or just laying the foundations for that was a problem. And 2, the second thing is, and because it's hard, here's a reward for you for doing so well at this very hard thing. So we talked about the idea, well, does school have to be thought of as being hard? Could you change that? I mean, it's fun. There's bits where you go to connect. It's learning. Learning can feel challenging, but doesn't have to be hard. So we just started changing that story. And then we talked about the idea that if you need fuel, which, look, let's be honest, kids often do. They are very active. Kids are very active. So your fuel, certainly kids can have, and metabolically flexible kids can do carbs. I mean, as we keep talking about, carbs are not necessarily the devil. So you can certainly do carbs, but in your mind, keep it as just neutral foods. So we have this idea that we want to make it yummy. And yummy means that you are more likely to eat more than you actually need. It's really, there's this fine line, right, that we need to walk. Because in my head now, whenever I hear something was so delicious and so yummy, in my head I now go, I don't really want that. I don't want that anymore. Because if it's so delicious and so yummy, that might mean that I know, and I'm talking about my experience, I won't be able to just regulate it easily. Well, good morning, Liz. I want to be able to regulate my food intake easily. I don't need to make it harder for myself. So the thing about processed food in particular is it's designed to be unregulatable. Okay, it is designed to override any regulatory systems we have. So even things like savoury shapes, tiny teddies, biscuits, chips, any of that stuff, completely designed to undermine our own regulatory system. So I know myself very well, and it's very hard to stop. So do you remember the idea that, and again, all of you with kids, or all of you have been kids, did you used to do this? You'd go to your mum, I'm hungry, and she'd go have an apple. I'm not hungry for an apple. Okay, again, not really hungry if you're not hungry for an apple. And so my thing is about, eggs. I talk about it a lot. Eggs or cheese, cheddar cheese. It's quite hard to overeat them. They don't tend to buy into that regulatory system. So if you don't want them, you're not actually hungry. So a beautiful board for kids when they come home, if you wanted to do a picking board, is, eggs, cheese, some nuts. Yes, kids can have fruit. I would avoid dried fruit. Dried fruit is just, dehydrated little sugar balls. They've taken out all the water and that sort of stuff. But, those are the things that we would be doing rather than rewarding them for their hard day with cakes and lollies or treats, okay? If they need fuel, give them fuel and nutrient-dense food. So then so unpacking all of that, what it actually meant for this lady was that, again, in her head, the before dinner time was the reward time because, she'd either been at work, she'd been doing some, tedious tasks like folding, washing, which was boring. She'd, tidied up the, toys in the toy room for the 1,000,000th time. So in her head, all of this was hard and so needed to be mitigated or balanced, that's what that means, with something nice. So that's part of why she found it difficult then to stop that picking underneath because she was still in that idea that she needed a reward before dinner to compensate for her terrible day. God, waffling this morning. But it takes a long time. So it takes a long time to undo this. And it takes a long time to let go of hyperpalatable foods that are designed to blow our mind, so to speak. Yes, Sally, fruit or yogurt. Again, I would be making sure that there is something in there with some fat and protein. Okay, fat and protein is really good for kids. Fat gives them energy if they're worried about fuel. Protein is good for their muscles. So fat and, again, that's why I understand not everyone can have eggs. There's egg allergy out there, and not everyone can have dairy. There's dairy allergy out there as well. But yeah, there's lots of options for us. So that's what we're talking about this week. So I guess we'll wind it up for today. But just think in your head what the food represents to you, and then we can start to unpack it. All right, darlings, that's me done for today. I'm off to work again. I've got Pilates this afternoon, so I'm excited about that. And I'll see you all soon. Bye, lovelies.